Hello, and welcome to Arts in Emergency, a podcast that is capturing the changing and emerging arts in a time of COVID. My very first guest is Jess Muise. Jess is the visual arts manager for the Umbrella Arts Center, and she's drawn to creation as an act of transformation. She's interested in helping us better understand ourselves and each other through the arts. Jess has been a member of the Boston Community Leaders Fellowship, and she has more than a decade of experience presenting, teaching, training, and serving as an administrator in Wayfair, Mass Art, Artisans Asylum, and so much more. Jess has a certificate in Arts and Culture Strategy from University of Pennsylvania. She has a bachelor's degree, graduated with honors from NYU in individualized study in dance and education and transformative pedagogy. She also holds certificates in permaculture design and master gardening, and she enjoys working at the intersection of the arts and the environment. Jess, thank you so much for being my first guest on Arts in Emergency. It is such a joy to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Robin, for having me.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about Umbrella Arts Agency, the mission, and how long you've been there and in what capacity you work there?
Yeah, so I am the visual arts manager at the Umbrella Arts Center. I've been there for 2.5 years now, and we're located in Concord, Massachusetts, which is just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And our mission is to build a vibrant community through the arts.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Simple and complex.
Yes, yes, yes.
Great. Well, so can you tell us a little bit about how the organization was doing before the global pandemic? What were you celebrating? What programs and activities were you engaged in or preparing? And what challenges even were you facing before this global pandemic came into our backyard?
Yeah, so the Umbrella Art Center is in a historic building in the town center, and out of that building we provide workspace for artists of all disciplines and the opportunity for artists to share their work with the public. We have exhibition space, performance space, we provide education programs for all ages, and we work a lot at the intersection of arts and environment in our public artwork. So we, in the spring, were, planning for expanded, in the fall of 2019, we had just reopened our facility. So that was the culmination of more than a decade of planning and a $30 million capital campaign project. And so we just really restored parts of this beautiful historic building and expanded our capacity to serve not only Concord, but the region. So expanded performance space, expanded education space. And so in the spring, we were really planning on, how can we scale, how can we grow our impact? And, planning for summer camp, planning to have, up to 3 times as many kids as we could have served in the old facility. So a lot of excitement, sort of, nose to the grindstone. We're all kind of on a team getting ready for what we felt like was going to be a really successful summer and fall. Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations on that successful campaign. That's huge. And thinking about, how that can serve a community that is, as I think you've told me before, you're in Thoreau land. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very close to Walden Pond and, the lands that Thoreau and Emerson walked and where they lived, and Louisa May Alcott, and yeah.
Yeah. So there's just so much history and that intersection between the arts and environment. That's no joke. That's really rich in your region. And then a global pandemic came. It came to your region. It came to your backyard. What happened when COVID arrived? What what decisions were made? What challenges did you face? And even like, what was that moment like, you know, where it became a reality that things were not going to be the same?
So uh, this is a really interesting question because I'm actually back to that sort of last day before we closed. And this was in early March. And at that point where things, at least, sort of in the public domain conversation and the news went from this is something we should be thinking about to this is something we need to take serious action on yesterday. And so we had a planning meeting scheduled for our annual Earth Month parade and festival, which happens at the end of April. And, that is a big public event in which hundreds of people, march down the streets of downtown Concord and celebrate the Earth. And so, myself, other staff, some of our community partners, volunteers, we're all in a room together and just trying to be 6 feet apart. There weren't really any guidelines quite in place other than just sort of distancing from folks, washing hands. This all just had started to come out in the public.
Right, like not even mask wearing at this point, right?
Yeah. So it was, I just remember feeling in my body this sort of tenseness and this kind of anxiety in the air and looking at people and really just thinking about and as people kind of were getting up, moving around, it created this bobbing and weaving around chairs and not trying to, get too close to people, which is really hard when you work in the arts and, I have found that working with groups of people in the expressive arts are expressive in their work together and, laughing and joking and just sort of getting on, we weren't really doing any of that. We were just sort of like, well, it sounds like we probably won't be able to have a few hundred people get together. What do we do? And that day as well, we had just hung up an exhibition the week prior, and I just had this feeling. I was like, I really should just capture this. And so I went around and I took a bunch of photographs and videos and like just spent my last hours, like that was the last time I've been at the art center, was just
Oh,
trying to capture
wow.
stuff to share later, which was very useful. And so even when things shut down, it was really just getting an email from our executive director, like, oh, all right, we're shut down. The first thing that we decided to do was to meet as often as possible as a staff. So that was actually a big thing that changed for us was, a lot of informal, in the halls meetings and things like that, really shifted to meeting, 3 times a week to be not only just to stay connected, but, really try to tease out some of these things. A lot of those meetings initially were just, honestly, we were really afraid of like what, everyone's bringing their own personal lives to the table. But I think we had the footage from the gallery and then we had this Earth Month festival, which, we really didn't want to cancel. That's been one of the things we struggled with was do we cancel things or do we postpone them or do we try and go forward? And, a facility is one way that we can live out our mission, right? Providing a physical infrastructure. But what is that physical infrastructure for? It's for the community and connection and the opportunity to create, which, connects us to our humanity and the humanity of others.
Right.
So, we thought, well, if we continued with an event like Earth Month, what's really the purpose of it? What is the reason we gather people? And for that event, it's to connect people with nature through art. We don't necessarily need the building to do that, we realized, or
Right.
or the container of the parade or even any of the traditions which we care about so much, but it was still really important to think about how to bring the community together. So instead of a one-day festival, we actually developed a series of activities that people could do from home, on their own with their families to connect with art and nature with materials that they, likely had in their home or no materials at all. And so that was really fun to do, and we're all like, why don't we do this every year? Uh, so that's one example of how we were able to just think quickly about applying, about dealing with the change.
Yeah, tell me more about that. Like, what a beautiful thing to come out of. Here you're at one moment you're capturing that, the daily humor and interactions have changed, and instead of trying to be close to each other, you're trying to get away from each other, out of respect and care for each other. Then this moves into, a two-dimensional world, and we're flat screening, which is, where we are right now. I mean, we would be anyway, because I'm in Oregon and you're in Massachusetts, but the world has become flat in a way. And suddenly out of that, you're recognizing, wait, the very thing that we want to celebrate, it's outside, not inside. And that's gorgeous. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the parade, and then also, what did this kind of make in place art look like? Did you have artists, guiding via video? Hey, here are some pieces, and here's what you do with them, or what did that look like? So I'd love to hear more about the parade and this make in place art.
Yeah. So one of the strengths I think of how the umbrella works is we work a lot by committee, and so the story about meeting in this room with all of our partners and volunteers and artists. I think artists can really lead the way with their creativity and problem solving. So I think we sort of followed what some of the artists that we already work with, who we would have been paying them to perform at this festival or provide an activity at this festival. Instead, we just said, well, we're still going to pay you. We're going to keep our contract. How would you translate this experience to someone at home? And so there's, a technical learning curve there for some who wanted to, share their performance in a live format or in a recorded format. And so that's been an interesting kind of new skill we've had to work on with artists, is building that capacity.
Mm.
Um, some of these activities were just simple photographs and instructions on making a birch bark canoe, for example. So you can go outside, get some birch bark with some thread and a needle, knit, kind of sew that together, and then you can head to the river and launch it. And yeah, so
Beautiful.
so that's that sweet spot of something that not only can you make, but then you can get outside and spend quality time with people you care about, and then imagining that other people in your community are also launching those boats out into the water.
Yeah,
It's a
and
way to connect.
yeah, that river becomes your connection point. It becomes it becomes the space that you share. And how perfect is that it would be a river, that would be connecting everyone. I also, and I want to hear about the parade too, but you just said something that I haven't heard a lot during this time of COVID, which is, and correct me if I got this wrong, you kept the contracts. You
Mhm.
honored contracts with artists. There was no force majeure. There was no, in bad times, we cancel the contract and it means nothing. This contract continued to mean something for Umbrella and its artists. Um, can you briefly talk about any decision making that you were privy to around deciding to honor the contracts? Like, why that as opposed to any other decision?
Yeah, I think for us, we honored all of our sort of spring contracts, all of our immediate contracts. Yeah, of course we stepped back and evaluated the summer and the fall. But it really felt like um, we knew just working with the artists directly so much, and they're involved in the decision making. They really inspired us as sort of the administrative staff to trust that um, they would still be able to deliver programs that, they set out to do. And it's not really about the product either, because, we weren't going to evaluate somebody doing Zoom for the first time as a performance.
Right.
There's kind of a shared learning in that process. I mean, I think just because we have artists leading us in so many ways, it was the natural decision. It wasn't controversial. It only made sense to move forward. And it's, some of our funding for artists is grant funded as well. And so we're lucky to have our funders, also say, oh yeah, use it for whatever you need it to be used for.
Yeah. And that's great to hear. I mean, you said so much just in saying like the artists leading us, right? That you're really letting the artists have their agency, and you see them as a part of the organization, not separate from, which sometimes occurs in arts organizations. That's beautiful. So then with the parade, was there something similar? I mean, did the street become the river in that?
We did not have a parade portion. And so it's interesting you bring that up though, because now we are being, we're looking at outdoor space. And now that things are a little bit different and people are gathering a bit more outside and can social distance and, work to be safe, we're working on new projects that are almost all outdoors. So one fun thing we're working on now is we have commissioned artists to paint doors that we've just, sort of recycled. And the Concord Trails Committee is helping to fund that so they can be put out on a new portion of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. So
Beautiful.
it's a nice way to say, hey, come outside. I mean, that's one thing I'm finding very interesting in a place like Concord is the town sort of opening up to art outdoors and being in the community more, integrated more. In a historic district, it would have been very difficult before COVID to get something like a painted door by a contemporary artist, put in public space. And now they recognize that, we're serving the community's ability to, be outside and recreate and all of these things that they do sort of more through conservation and recreation, recognizing art can be a really powerful tool just to make people feel good.
Yeah.
So that's a fun sort of expansion and a new project we're working on.
That's fantastic. We need to have another conversation to be able to come back to this so you can tell
I know.
everyone how this is going, because I mean you're saying so much in this moment. What I'm hearing around the edges of that is maybe public art wasn't as much a priority at the time. Maybe the public art that existed captured a voice, or certain voices maybe mattered more in a time before COVID. And maybe during this time, there's a recognition that, public art invites voices that are not typically heard in a space, but that do exist. And in this case, maybe that's one example of that is contemporary art and contemporary artists. And I know we can, the conversation can certainly expand from there. But I would
I think,
love to come back to it. Yeah.
yeah, well, I think, when we talk about public art and just art with, since COVID has happened, I think, it plays a different role in people's lives. And I think we saw that, so we sort of figured out our, this one event, right? This Earth Month. Okay, we were able to deal with it. And then we sort of went into the, oh, well, what about all of our classes and all of our performances and all of our operations? How do we reach people? How do we, connect with people? Do people have time for art? What are they spending their time, money on? And, people are in survival mode a lot. And so one thing I think we did, which was incredibly helpful, was just ask. We sent out a series of surveys to people to find out what were they doing? What would they want to do? What would they spend money on? How much money would they spend? Because we generate a lot of ideas. We just tried to really blow open the brainstorming process. And we had this great, one example, we had this great idea. We have a really strong clay program and a strong clay community. We teach classes, we offer space for independent artists. And we thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool now that people are on Zoom? This is about a month in, right? So this is kind of past panic point. We executed on our one event, and then we're okay, back to the grindstone, back to our sort of our bread and butter programs. So we thought, oh, cool, we can bring like an international master clay artist to our community and have a cool workshop that we never would have had before, because we might not have been able to afford the travel and arrangements and all this stuff. And we could expand it to, we can host maybe 10 students for an intensive like that. We could open it up. Great idea, right? Sounds awesome. Our community was like, nope. Their answer was, hey, that's awesome. We want you to do that. But we feel like making that investment in a technique or tool that we can't directly apply isn't right. So, and that technique, clay is in person. There's lots of tools and kilns and specialized equipment that we have, and that's part of the value of our center. But if people didn't have access to that, they didn't want to build their skills in that area. So instead, we just focused on, okay, well, what can people build around their house with tools in their kitchen? And started doing just little free videos. Mike Roche, our ceramic program manager, is an amazing ceramic artist. And so he just started doing, all right, how to make a cup from home with stuff you already have. And that led into, now we have a curbside pickup of clay and materials. So folks can come pick up a bag of clay and then videos that they can use and, make a few things with themselves, their family, their, kind of all ages, all abilities. And then for folks who are making, we do have artists in our community who may have, a wheel in their basement, something like that. They can drop off their work and get fired. And, get glazed and all those finishing processes that people don't have. So, I think in a way we're going to keep that as a revenue stream. I mean, it's a small piece, and revenue is not the only decision there, but people just are giving us that feedback that they love, even just showing up, driving up curbside, picking up their stuff, and they just feel connected to the community, even though they can't physically be with each other.
Oh, that's beautiful on so many levels. And that's really, as you're saying this, something's occurring to me that is also maybe hopefully changing, not just at the umbrella and in your community, but elsewhere. And that's that in a lot of places, I think the arts and culture sector has been perceived as another place of consumption, where an audience member or a spectator pays to receive something. And maybe that idea of creating opportunities to participate in something together has been lost. But to actually, do curbside pickup and bring the art into the home and encourage that in the home, and then find ways to share that art, that's really flipping that script, right? It's not the artist, or it's not the consumer. Like, you become the artist. If you're an arts patron, then you're also an arts maker right now.
Yeah.
You're a decision maker via surveys and polls and even, kind of voting with the art that you make and share.
Yeah, I have so enjoyed, seeing what people are making, and we're actually, instead of our planned fall exhibition of contemporary artists in the region, we're going to showcase what our community is making at home. So we're going to, elevate their work in our gallery, show it, to reflect it back to them, and then share it beyond. So that's, that makes me so happy to be doing that, and that feels like the right thing to do. And just what you're saying about sort of flipping, it's almost like flipping a hierarchy or just changing where the value is and kind of distributing it and bringing everyone together. And just the participatory nature of it is really important to me. We run a variety of residency programs, and normally we'd be bringing in artists to, do intensive work to create a piece. And, we work with the Minuteman National Historical Park on one of our
Mm.
residency programs. And so normally that's what would be happening right now. We'd have a single artist, making a piece. And this year, we can't do that. So we're doing artist in your residence. So that has been, similarly so fun to say, hey, well, what kind of art would you make in response to the site rather than going through an artist? And I think, artists are still so valuable. It's not about devaluing their work, but I think it's been about shifting their focus. So normally we'd be paying an artist to make a piece. We're trying to shift that, so we're paying them to help our community make pieces. So that's been a shift too, is that all of our instructors and artists are actually just picking up more hours because we're relying more on them to develop programs and bring their artistry to our community in that way.
That's an incredible use of skills, of wisdom. That's really extraordinary. Oh, I love that we're capturing this time. It's I think a lot of conversation around this time of COVID has been the new predicament that we're in and the challenges that we're facing and just how difficult it is. And yet, as we're having this conversation, there's just this emergence of opportunity and uh, more connection or new connections, rediscoveries of value, where value lies, uh, and how to showcase that. I mean, it's really extraordinary. Um, we had a conversation not long ago too, where you shared with me that you had a fundraiser coming up, a gala, and you reported in that the gala was a huge success. One of the things I remember you telling me about that was how humanizing it was.
Mm.
Is there anything from that like, just as we're talking about learning where the value of the arts and community is during this time, is there anything from that successful gala you would want to capture and share?
Mm. Yeah, so we have our annual Outrageous gala every May, and that was another difficult decision we had to make about whether to continue forward or cancel it. And we felt confident, partly after running our Earth Month event, that all right, let's go for it. Um, and so having this, what's normally an exclusive event where people pay, a high ticket price to support the umbrella and, have cocktail hors d'oeuvres and performances, we decided to bring that all on Zoom and, present the live program for free for anyone who wanted to see a great, selection of performers. And then our donors and sponsors and community were able to buy a sort of sponsor ticket and then join us sort of before the event for our normal cocktail hour. And I just remember seeing folks, still dressed up, in their formal wear, festive formal wear.
In their
Um,
homes?
yeah, in their homes. I just remember someone sort of on their couch with their dress on, shoes off, bare feet up on the coffee table, people's kids running around, pets running around. And it just, everyone sort of looking at each other in Zoom and saying hi, and all of that. And it just made this experience what again is usually exclusive and something that not everyone in my community, friends, family would normally attend something like that, right? So this was an opportunity for me just to share, hey, look at this cool thing that we're doing at the umbrella. It's free and open to the public. And what we actually saw from that, we do we get most of the funds from sponsorships. We were gracious, we're grateful to our generous sponsors who, still wanted to stick with us and help us run this event. We usually have a fundraising moment during the event, and typically we get a kind of small number of large donations, from people in the room
Right.
to support a specific, cause. This year we had a larger number of smaller amounts donated to us from
Mm.
all this just community nationally that tuned in to watch this experience. So that was, in a way, just wow, okay. Maybe it doesn't have to be this exclusive experience. Maybe we can share this with the world and still be supported and still be able to, provide for our community locally. And so it was just, we were so grateful that it worked out so well.
Yeah, congratulations. That's beautiful and beyond humanizing. I mean, that it had a reach beyond your community, really well beyond your community. I love that you said, like, hey, maybe these events don't need to be exclusive, right? Maybe they can be more inclusive, which of course it's making my mind go to this beautiful tipping point in the Black Lives Matter movement, that of course has come out of so much tragedy, compounded with more tragedy. Has there been any movement in your community or with your organization around around George Floyd's murder, around um, you know Arbery, Taylor, on and on, and uh, this beautiful force that's for change that's happening right now? Have minds changed? Are actions changing? Like beyond a Black Lives Matter statement on a website, is there real change happening as a result of this, or can you see it coming?
Yeah, this has been a really intense and challenging time for everyone at the Umbrella. The Umbrella and the Concord community is predominantly white and, more than 95% white. And so, being on the staff, we all, immediately after George Floyd's murder, immediately started talking about, what would the Umbrella do? And I think, taking a step back from the Umbrella, we actually all started to have conversations with each other about what it means to be a white-led organization historically and still in a, predominantly white community. What is our role, responsibility? What could we do? What shouldn't we do? These are all questions we started to wrestle with. And, you know, one commitment we made was to just start talking about race more often and start talking about how it operated on our team. And there's no way not to bring your personal life and experience to that. And
Mhm.
so have had pretty much daily conversations, but we're facilitating kind of open space for each other to talk about what we're afraid of and um, to invite vulnerability and authentic conversation, and also, really push us to think beyond, okay, well, it's let's bring Black artists in, okay, great. um, thinking beyond about a demographic shift, like really thinking about what the umbrella could do and what the challenges are, beyond the art center. So talking with other staff, just hearing, I'm, more inspired and in a way in alignment to hear people on my team talk about, well, I want to be an anti-racist. I don't think I'm there yet. How can I get there? What can I do? How can we support each other in doing that? And then how can we make this place that we all work an anti-racist organization, which is that next level. And then for the folks on my team who are parents, just thinking about how can we raise the next generation of anti-racists, and where does that build into our curriculum, and how we make decisions about who is teaching and what our pricing is, and how we contract with artists, how we work with artists. We're talking about commissioning work by Black artists in our community. How do we do that appropriately? How do we, not replicate white supremacy in our response? So we're involving, members of the board, advisory council, people in the community who want to have these conversations at all levels. And I think just the authenticity is like, COVID happened and we all started talking a bit more about a bit more real, but then George Floyd, George Floyd's death really just turned everything up to like, okay, now what are we really doing? What is art for? If we believe art is to build a vibrant community, this is the world we're in. So we need to apply art to really fix this. Not only fix this, but I believe art is for transformation. And so it's not easy work. And I think we're going to struggle with it for a long time. But I'm really glad that we're wrestling with it every day. And already it has changed our programming decisions into the future pretty much indefinitely. Just any artistic decisions now, we've sort of just kind of pulled the reins back and said, okay, we can't go forward without reevaluating how we've made these decisions. So it's a little scary, I think, for leadership in some ways. And a lot of this is, it's happening so fast too. But I'm really excited to see like where this will go.
That's great. That's so, that's energizing. Yeah, there's, thank you for sharing that. That can be a real touchy and vulnerable place to go. And I didn't even ask you if it was okay if we could go there. And I appreciate you sharing with me the journey that your organization is on around this and your community. So we have to circle back around to we have to come back to these moments, like a few months down the road and see where things are. I think, that's another thing is I think a lot of podcasts and webinars, certainly we've been spending a lot of time on Zoom, spending conferences and galas, etc., on Zoom. But this one and done business, right? This idea of we just have the one conversation and then we move on is, I think that's a thing of the past too. And you seem to have captured that, and like COVID maybe cracked a shell, and now again with George Floyd's murder, that has really launched and created an opportunity for a tipping point, and everyone being not engaged in work, not on the race course of career, not otherwise engaged, distracted, or escaping what it means to be here with each other alive right now. So yes, I'm with you. Art is transformational, and it is capturing who we are in flux. I think we've long had this idea that, and from all the stories that we've been told, it begins with once upon a time, right? And it sets, so many fairy tales, they set this idea that we've been in a status quo for a long period of time. And then suddenly something happens, and everything changes for a brief period of time, and then we're back in a status quo. But the world is always changing. There are, however, these emergent moments, these emergencies, and then a lot of emergence that follows. And I thank you for sharing so beautifully what that looks like in your neck of the woods in Concord, Massachusetts, with the Umbrella Art Center. Is there anything as we wrap up that you're really looking forward to, that you're wondering about, that you're hopeful for in the months to come?
It's almost like we have permission now to start from scratch. And I'm really excited to take these programs that, I've run for a few years, the organization has run for many years. Our usual winter market, for example, our craft fair, usually a pretty standard craft fair. I'm just really excited to rethink it entirely. And again, go back to, what's the purpose and meaning? Why are we bringing people together and starting from there? And that really just invigorates me when I'm working, is being that aligned and connected to mission and purpose. So, I'm hoping that we can carry that into the future and, not get back on autopilot and really keep that work to be here now with each other, because I think that's where the real work begins.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. So it really sounds like this time is allowing Umbrella Art Center to become a vibrant community through the arts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jess, thank you so much for spending time with me today and for sharing what's happening with the Umbrella Arts Center during this time of, it's hard to call it an emergency time anymore. It really just feels like a time of emergence.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for thinking of me and us. And yeah, look forward to our next conversation and sharing, where we are a few months from now.
Great.